Welcome to the Stokes Cycling Show. This week, I believe, is the most exciting week in the road calendar of professional cycling. It's National Championships week. But, surprisingly, that is not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about the Giro dell'Appennino, Italian one-day race. It's a 1.1 race, so the third tier of professional cycling, in effect. This year's route is the same as the last few. It goes through Piemonte and Liguria. It starts in Novi Ligure, which is, surprisingly, given the name, in Piemonte, and it finishes in Genova after a run down the coastline. It's roughly 200 kilometres long. Across the course, there are 7 sprints, most of which, in theory, will be taken by the breakaway. Which should be a good prize for any of the teams going for that move. The first roughly 55-60 kilometres are flat. It starts through the town of Novi Ligure and then goes kind of... It's all on main roads, wide, pretty easy. In theory, the break will go pretty quickly. However... there should be a lot of teams trying to get into this move. There's a hell of a lot of Italian continental teams here, along with a Hungarian team in Karkaj. I'm not 100% sure how to say that. And also the Victoria Sports team from the Philippines are also in this race. There's also... on top of that, the Mexican team Petrolike and the development team of the Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe team, all of which continental teams, in theory, may want to try and get into this breakaway, along with some pro teams as well. But I would suggest all the Italian teams, Carcage and Victoria Sports predominantly, should be wanting to get into this breakaway. And given the number of teams that should want to get into this breakaway, it'll be interesting to see how long it takes to go. I'm not sure how much coverage there is of this race. I'm going to watch as much of it as I can. But the first climb is at 60k in. So if teams decide they don't want a larger breakaway to go, it could be really difficult to get a move away before that climb. And in theory, if a move goes over that climb, it should be smaller than if it goes on the flat beforehand. So the first time is Castagnola. It's 2.9 kilometres at 5.2%. It's on a little extra loop around. And the section after the climb will be rode twice due to already passing it the first time round. Like I say, if the break goes on this climb, it should actually be pretty good Italian continental riders, most likely. If not, break should be well gone. They should have buckets of time at this point. There's another 40-50k of flat after that to the Passo de Giovi, which is, again, it's a very, very simple climb, 2.3 kilometres, 4.6%. However, the descent after it is pretty technical, and I imagine in the bunch, teams will basically want to be in position from this climb, which is about halfway into the race, till the end. After this descent, it's a drop down the valley towards Genova, and then a swing off to the eastern side, up the Crocetta d'Orero, 9 kilometre climb, 3.3%. Doesn't sound very difficult. However, if you look at it properly, it's actually, realistically, a 5k climb, over 5%. It's on quite wide roads in comparison to the later climbs. But the King of the Mountains point, which I think the break will just about still be away at this point if it's got a couple of stronger riders in it. It's after a plateau, basically, the King of the Mountain point. The descent, again, it's a little bit technical. It looks quite fun. That's my that's my opinion on this descent. And then they descend down, go back into the valley, come up the way they came down the valley briefly, and they start one of the two major climbs of this route, the kind of race-defining climbs of this route. The Pietraversera, 6.2 kilometers, 7.7%. There is a massive right-hand corner into a particularly narrow road into the base of this climb, and the first 2 kilometers are at over 9%. And yeah, I think that the major attacks of the race, given some of the riders in this race, need to start from this climb, right from the base. It needs to, for certain teams, it needs to go very hard at this point anyway. Again, really technical descent coming down the other side, and then another very, very difficult climb instantly, not really any valley road in between. The Madonna della Guardia, 6.9 kilometers at 7.8%. Again, very narrow, very, very steep at various sections of the climb. It's a little bit uneven, but some of the kilometers, I believe it's the second kilometer and then the final kilometer, are both very steep. There's also a kilometer at about 2% in there. So very, very uneven climb. And again, really, really technical descent after this. It crests with around 25 kilometers to the finish. And then the final 15 kilometers are a flat run in to Genova. I love this route. This route is brilliant. Last year we saw Jan Christen, I believe, go on the final climb and solo to victory. This year I feel like tactically it could be a little bit more interesting. So I've already been over the teams I think should get in the breakaway. I would name them individually, but I do not have a lot of time to do this, so yeah, I've been over them already. And then I've kind of split the remaining teams up in two categories. So I've got a favourites category and a contenders category. My favourites category, I have 4 teams in it. The first team I would like to speak to is who I believe are the favourites for this race. Despite UAE Emirates being at this race, I think the favourites are XDS Astana. They have kind of a double-edged attack. Diego Luisi, first season ever not at UAE Emirates or its various forms, and Simone Velasco, who won the sprint behind in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. I think these two riders are two of the strongest in the race entirely. Ulissi, incredible climber, incredible puncher, still at his age, coming towards the end of his career. And Velasco is one of them riders that I would be scared of in kind of any situation. He's got a really, really good kick on him, but also he is a very good climber in his own right. I think they're the favourites because they have the ability to follow moves and let the other sit on. Their setup for this is actually quite interesting. They've got a younger team around them. Really like the Frenchman Pierre-Henri Basset. He should be really, really interesting to see in this race because I'm assuming he will be Ulissi and Velasco's kind of last domestique. See how far into the race he can get. But I think just kind of as a tactical approach, let Ulissi follow moves, let Velasco sit on, is the more preferable strategy. Because Ulissi, I think, is a higher level climber at the top end. Little bit concerned about Ulissi on the descents. He's not known as a particularly confident descender, but I think he should be okay. I think it's probably best to talk about the UAE Team Emirates next. They also kind of have it's either duo leadership or trio leadership. I'm not entirely sure. I do kind of expect within the race Domin Novak to fall into a domestique role. However, given the strength of this team, I think Novak, for maybe his only opportunity this season, could race for himself here. But I think more importantly, they have Pablo Torres, who I personally, as of right now, believe is the best climber in this race. He hasn't been particularly exciting in World Tour races. He's done a lot of domestique work for bigger leaders within the team so far this year. But given his own chance, I think he's the best climber in this race. But they also have Alessandro Covi. So if the race can come down to a group sprint, Covi is very, very quick. And I would say quicker than Velasco if they both make the group. I think, however, for UAE to win, they have to make it as hard as humanly possible. I genuinely believe that this race can be won from the second climb out. And I think if UAE set Torres up to attack on the second climb out, I think it could be curtains for everyone else. However, I do think there's one guy in the field who could possibly follow Torres, given the hardest possible scenario of this race, and that is Poltivisit Malta's Davide Piganzoli. He's shown form. He was out on his own for a really long time in the mountain stage in Occitanie, eventually got caught, but I believe he still came second in GC. I think Polti have a real star on the hands. I believe there's rumours of him going to Visma Lease bike for next season. Absolutely great signing if he does, in my opinion. I think he is the second best climber in this race, and I think, given the form I've seen him in already in recent days, Piganzoli can absolutely attempt to follow Torres if the race is as hard as possible. And the only other man I've given favourite status to in this race is Intermarché Wanty's Louis Barret. He was climbing extraordinarily well in Combloux, I believe it was, in Criterium du Dauphiné. And Barret has a sneakily strong sprint. I think if a small group comes to the end, again, he is very, very much one of the guys who can win it. Unfortunately for Louis Barret, the only reason I put him this... I put him lower than the other guys on this list of favourites is I don't think he can win solo, where I believe anyone else I've mentioned probably can win solo. But I think Intermarché should be one of the teams controlling this race, and I don't think they necessarily want it to be as hard as maybe a UAE or Polti for Piganzoli would want it. And other than that, I've got the kind of list of second-rate contenders, but still guys who I think have a genuine chance of winning this race, especially if their teams play it tactically well. Burgos Beace, they have Jose Manuel Diaz and Eric Fagundes. Both of them are really strong options. Fagundes is really quick from a small group. Diaz is probably the better climber of the two. Should be interesting. Voefi Bardiani, I think, is a really strong team here. They have maybe 5 or 6 guys who could contend for a top 20, but I think in particular Covilli and Pinarello, the climbers. Don't know how Pinarello is after he didn't finish the Giro, but then also Martin Maciulusi is historically one of the most attacking guys in the professional peloton, but also he is really, really quick at a finish. If they can get Maciulusi there, I think he has a very, very good chance of a podium. Also, in this category, I have Solution Tech Vini Fantini. They have a number of options. They're a team that seem to blow hot and cold, but their kind of standout performer this year, I would say, is Kirilla Sorenko, the Ukrainian rider. But they've also got Lorenzo Quartucci and Valerio Conti to go at. Whoever's in the best form, they should try and work for. Maybe try and get one of them in the breakaway as well, and hope they can just kind of hold on to a good result. And then, yeah, the two continental teams I have in here are Petrolike, who have a really, really strong squad. Jonathan Caicedo, still, after last year being in Continental, I expected at least a pro team to bring him back to the professional ranks. Didn't happen, stayed at Petrolike. He is an incredible climber. On his day, he should be able to follow Torres and Pigonzoli on these climbs as well. But we shall see who's going well. I mean, they've also had another professional win with Callejas this season. But yeah, I think they have a really strong team, and again, a number of riders who can get a top 10, top 20 in this race given the form. And finally, the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe rookies. Two guys coming straight off of the Giro Next Gen, Lorenzo Finn and Luke Tuckwell, both getting a top 10. Tuckwell only lost GC on the final day. Finn was second strongest on the big climb on stage 3, I think. And also, obviously, is the current junior world champion. These two, maybe with Boissy, who is a French, kind of a bit more punchy rider. I believe he's a mountain biker. But they're all brilliant riders. But in a peloton of guys from the Pro Tour and the World Tour, they're not as well tested. And I think it'll be really, really interesting to see how well they go. And I would kind of suggest their team not getting into the breakaway and rallying around these guys, and then just letting the road decide which is the strongest for them. Because I think they could get a really, really surprising good result when they're not necessarily going to be looked at as the pure favourites. So yeah, that is kind of my entire preview. I have my own prediction. I think that as much as guys could go solo or get a couple away over the climbs, I think XDS Astana are in such a good position that I think they will win regardless of scenario, because I don't think anyone will be able to win solo, and if no one can win solo, it kind of it makes it a lot more difficult due to guys not cooperating with each other, basically. So my opinion on this race is that the winner will be Simone Velasco. I think Ulissi, even if he's in a group ahead, I think it'll all come back together. I think Ulissi will bury himself for Velasco. I think Ulissi, historically, despite being such a winner, I think he's also a really competent domestique, and I think given Velasco's in a group in which he could potentially win the sprint, Ulissi should work entirely for him, and I see Simone Velasco winning this race. I appreciate any feedback for this format, any advice, any ideas, any opinions. I'd love to hear them all. And I have to say now, thanks for watching, enjoy the Giro dell'Appennino, and goodbye.